The sun was setting over the golden hills of Malibu, spilling orange light across the terrace where Mel stood, hands clasped behind his back, watching the waves roll against the shore. The mansion behind him buzzed quietly with energy. Camera crews adjusting lights, producers whispering into headsets, and two women preparing for what could be the most emotional night of their lives. Mel Davis, 62 years old, widowed, charming in that effortlessly genuine way, had never imagined himself here. A reality dating show. Roses, cameras, interviews about feelings. Yet here he was, part beating like he was 20 again, about to make a choice that would change not only his life, but two others. Inside, Lena and Grace, his final two women, were getting ready in separate rooms. Both had fallen deeply for Mel, but in very different ways. Lena, 59, a retired high school English teacher from Oregon, carried a quiet confidence. She was the kind of woman who quoted poetry in conversation and could turn silence into warmth. Her silver hair shimmered under the vanity lights as she adjusted her earrings and took a deep breath. Grace, 56, an event planner from Florida, was fire and laughter, spontaneous, bold, and fiercely loyal. She was the one who'd danced barefoot in the rain during their first group date, who'd made Mel laugh harder than anyone since his late wife. Tonight, only one of them would stay. As the waves crashed below, Mel whispered to himself, "How do you choose between two hearts that both feel like home?" The final date. Before the final rose ceremony, Mel had one last date with each woman, a chance to say everything that still lingered unsaid. Lena's date was first. They met on a quiet sailboat, gliding across calm waters just before dusk. The sky was painted in cotton candy hues, and Mel found himself lost in the softness of it all, the sea, the air, her presence. "You've always had this calmness about you," Mel said, pouring her a glass of white wine. "When I'm with you, everything slows down." Lena smiled, her eyes glimmering. "Maybe that's what happens when you stop chasing and start cherishing." He looked at her then, really looked. The fine lines around her eyes, the strength in her gaze. "You remind me of my late wife in some ways," he admitted softly. "Not because you're like her, but because you have that same gentleness, the kind that makes people feel safe." Lena reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Love doesn't always have to start over. Sometimes it continues, just in a new form. It was the kind of line that stayed with him long after the night ended. The next day, it was Grace's turn. Their date was pure energy, a higher balloon over Napa Valley. The view stretched for miles, and Grace's laughter echoed against the open sky. "You've given me adventure again, Mel," she shouted, wind whipping her hair. Mel grinned. "You've given me joy again." When the balloon landed, they shared a picnic among the vineyards. Grace leaned into him, her hand tracing his wrist. "You've told me about the pain you've carried," she said. "And I want you to know, I'm not here to replace your past. I'm here to build your future." Mel exhaled. Grace had always been the spark that lit up his shadows. That night, back at the mansion, Mel sat alone by the fire, staring at the two roses on the table. Two women, two lives, two futures. He could feel the producers watching him from a distance, but for once, none of it mattered. This was no longer television. This was heartbreak in real time. The eve of the goodbye. As dawn broke, the mansion grew still. The women stayed in separate suites, unaware of Mel's final decision, but aware that the moment of truth was near. Lena spent the morning journaling. She wrote, "If it's me, I'll love him fully. If it's not, I'll love him enough to let go." Grace, meanwhile, was pacing. She couldn't stop thinking of the way he looked at her, that unspoken tenderness. She knew Mel's heart was torn, but she believed passion mattered more than calm. "Love should be fire," she murmured, "not just comfort." Downstairs, the stylist adjusted Mel's tie one last time. "Ready?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "I'll never be ready for this." The mansion's grand foyer had been transformed into a garden of roses, candles, and soft golden light. It looked like a dream, or perhaps a stage for heartbreak. Outside, the Pacific shimmered under the morning sun, mocking the storm building in everyone's chest. Mel stood by the window, his reflection split by the glass. In it, he saw two versions of himself, the man who longed for peace with Lena, and the man who still craved the spark that Grace ignited. His heart whispered both names. Inside the confession room, cameras were ready, but what no one saw, not the viewers, not the crew, was the silent battle in Mel's mind. He whispered to himself, "I came here to find love, not to lose myself." Lena's confession. Lena's interview chair faced a wall of soft light. She clasped her hands tightly in her lap, trying to still the tremor in her fingers. "Lena," the producer began gently, "tonight, Mel makes his final choice. How are you feeling?" Lena smiled, but it was the kind that barely held itself together. "It's strange. You think you're ready? But how can you ever be ready to lose something that feels this real?" She paused, eyes glistening. I told myself not to fall for him too deeply, but then he looked at me like I was home again, and I knew it was too late. Her voice broke slightly. "If he chooses me, I'll love him with everything I have left. And if he doesn't, I hope she loves him enough to never let him forget how it feels to be truly seen." The producer didn't speak. They didn't need to. The emotion in her words filled the silence. Grace's confession. When Grace entered the confession room, she exuded her usual energy, confident, radiant, unafraid. But when she sat down, her smile faltered for just a second. "Grace," the producer said softly, "tonight is the night. Are you ready?" She laughed nervously. "Ready? Oh, I've been ready for years, ready to feel alive again." Then her tone shifted. "Mel makes me laugh like no one has in a long time. But more than that, he listens. And that's what I need. Someone who doesn't try to fix me, but just sees me." Grace's eyes softened. "Do I think he'll choose me? I don't know. I think he's afraid of the fire. But love isn't supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be real." She looked into the camera with quiet conviction. "If he doesn't choose me, I'll still walk away grateful. Because for the first time in forever, I felt everything again." Mel's moment of truth. Back in his suite, Mel sat on the edge of the bed, staring at a photo of his late wife, Julia. Her smile, captured in a frame of silver, seemed to follow him everywhere. He picked it up, thumb brushing across the glass. "You told me to live again," he whispered. "But what if living means breaking someone's heart?" He closed his eyes. Lena was safety, a heartbeat he could rest against. Grace was the unknown, the thrill he'd almost forgotten he craved. He imagined a future with each, quiet mornings reading with Lena, wild, spontaneous adventures with Grace. Each vision felt right. Each felt wrong. A knock came at the door. It was Mara, the show's executive producer, sharp, kind, and the only one who dared interrupt Mel's solitude. "You've got 1 hour," she said softly. "Then we roll cameras." Mel nodded, but his voice trembled. "Mara, what if I make the wrong choice?" She smiled gently. "That's love, Mel. There's no right or wrong. There's only courage." He nodded again, but his heart still felt like glass about to crack. The women crossed paths. For the first time in days, Lena and Grace found themselves in the same hallway, both dressed in elegant gowns, hairstyled perfectly, nerves hidden under layers of composure. Lena wore a flowing champagne dress that shimmered with every breath she took. Grace, radiant in deep crimson, looked like fire incarnate. They froze when they saw each other. "Grace," Lena said softly. "Lena," Grace replied, her tone polite but heavy with unspoken tension. For a moment, they stood in silence, two women who had shared laughter, tears, and now heartbreak waiting to happen. Then Grace broke it. "No matter what happens, I hope he finds peace." Lena smiled faintly, "And I hope he finds joy." It was the most honest exchange of the night. They weren't rivals anymore. They were two souls standing at the edge of goodbye. The ceremony begins? The ceremony was set on the mansion's terrace, overlooking the sea. The sky was streaked with pink and gold, as if even nature understood the gravity of this moment. Soft music played, rose petals scattered across the ground. Mel stepped forward in a sleek gray suit, his eyes heavy with emotion. The two roses sat on the pedestal before him. Only one would be given. The women walked out one at a time. Grace first, confident, yet trembling slightly. Then Lena, serene, but her eyes betraying the storm inside. Mel took a deep breath. "From the moment I met both of you," he began, voice thick with emotion, "you showed me that love isn't limited by age. It's limitless, timeless, and still worth every risk." Lena blinked back tears. Grace's jaw tightened. Mel continued, "You've each reminded me of who I was, and who I could be again. But tonight, I have to follow my heart, even if it breaks someone else's." The air grew still. Even the sea seemed to stop moving. He looked down at the roses, and then up, straight beneath 1,000 tiny lights, each flicker reflecting in Mel's tear-filled eyes. The women stood before him, poised, beautiful and heartbreakingly vulnerable. The ocean breeze carried the scent of roses and salt, a haunting mix of beauty and melancholy. Mel's heart pounded. How do you choose between two souls that both healed you in different ways? He took a trembling breath, his hand hovering near the roses. Cameras zoomed in. Crew members held their breath. "Lena," he whispered first. Her eyes widened slightly. "You've given me peace," he said softly. "You remind me what it means to trust love again. Every moment with you felt honest, grounded, and safe. You showed me that love can still be quiet and steady, and that's something I never thought I'd find again." Grace's eyes shimmered with emotion, but she kept her chin lifted. Then Mel turned to her. "Grace, you've given me fire. You've reminded me that joy and adventure don't end with age. You've made me laugh, made me feel again, in ways I'd forgotten were possible." The tension in the air was unbearable. Even the ocean seemed to lean closer. Mel swallowed hard. His voice broke. "But tonight, I have to follow the part of my heart that feels most like home." He reached for a rose, the one on the left. Lena gasped. Grace's breath caught in her throat. Then, Mel walked forward. He stopped in front of Lena. "Lena," he whispered, voice trembling, "will you accept this rose?" Tears spilled down her cheeks as she nodded. "Yes," she breathed. "Of course, yes." Grace froze. Her painted smile faltered. The world around her blurred. The lights, the sound of applause from the crew, the rustle of dresses. She heard Mel's words, but they echoed like they belonged to someone else's life. He turned toward her. Their eyes met. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "You changed me, Grace. You really did. But when I picture my forever, I see Lena beside me." For a moment, Grace said nothing. Then, in a calm voice that stunned everyone, she smiled faintly and said, "Then you better make forever worth it." She hugged him. It wasn't forced. It was final. And then, still smiling, she turned and walked down the terrace steps, barefoot, carrying her heels in one hand like a woman walking away from the past. The cameras followed. The world watched. And Mel stood there, tears falling freely. Grace's goodbye. Outside, the air was cool against her flushed skin. Grace stopped near the fountain where they'd once shared a laugh during week 2. She sat on the edge, heels dangling from her hand, staring at her reflection in the rippling water. The producer approached gently. "Grace, can we?" "Yeah," she said, brushing away tears we can film. She took a deep breath and looked straight into the camera. "I didn't come here expecting to fall in love. I came here hoping to feel alive again. And I did. Mel made me remember that I'm still capable of love, and that's something I'll never regret." Her voice cracked slightly. "He chose what felt like home. I can't hate him for that. I just hope he never forgets the fire he left behind." Then softly, almost like a secret, she whispered, "Goodbye, Mel." As she walked toward the waiting car, the camera captured one final tear sliding down her cheek, silent but heavy with everything she didn't say. Inside the mansion. Back on the terrace, Lena and Mel stood in stunned silence. The music swelled, but it felt distant. Lena turned toward him, her hands shaking. "You look heartbroken," she said quietly. Mel exhaled slowly. "Because I am. I didn't just say goodbye to someone I cared about. I said goodbye to a part of myself that was brave enough to risk it all." Lena nodded, tears still clinging to her lashes. "Love's never clean, Mel. It's messy, it hurts, it's real, and that's what matters." He looked at her then, the woman he'd chosen, and for the first time that night, he smiled through his tears. "You're right. It is real." They embraced, and the cameras caught it, that fragile, trembling moment when two people decided to start over. But deep down, neither of them knew that this wasn't the end. It was only the calm before another storm. The twist behind the scenes. As the final rose ceremony wrapped and the crew began clearing the set, whispers spread among the production team. In a quiet corner of the mansion, Nara, the executive producer, was on the phone, pacing. "Yes," she said quietly. "We have it on tape, Grace." She said something to one of the crew members before leaving. She paused, listening. Her eyes widened slightly. "No, you're not going to believe what she told him." A long silence followed, broken only by the distant crash of waves. Finally, Mara said, "Yes, I'll tell Mel in the morning." Then she hung up, face pale under the soft light. Something in Grace's final words, something not caught on camera, was about to change everything. The morning after the finale, the Malibu mansion felt eerily quiet. The rose petals from the ceremony still clung to the terrace, glimmering faintly under the early light. The champagne glasses from the after-party sat half empty, the laughter from last night long gone. Mel sat alone in the breakfast room, a mug of untouched coffee before him. He was wearing the same suit jacket from the night before, the rose boutonniere slightly wilted. The crew had already begun packing up equipment, but Mel couldn't move on yet. He had chosen Lena, and he didn't regret it. But something about Grace's goodbye haunted him. The way she'd smiled through Heartbreak. The way she'd whispered something to one of the producers before getting into that car. It was the kind of goodbye that didn't feel final. The unexpected visit. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. It was Mara, the show's executive producer, holding a manila envelope in her hands. She looked tired, like she'd been awake all night. "Mel," she said carefully, "there's something you need to see." He frowned. "What is it?" Mara hesitated before handing him the envelope. "Grace left this for you." His breath caught. "When?" Just before she left the set, Mara said. She gave it to one of the assistant producers and said it was only to be delivered after filming wrapped. She didn't want to influence your decision. Mel stared at the envelope for a long moment before opening it. Inside was a handwritten letter. No cameras, no rehearsed lines, just Grace's looping, emotional handwriting. He began to read. Grace's letter. "Dear Mel, if you're reading this, it means the cameras are off, the lights are gone, and you've made your choice. And that's okay. I want you to know I'm not angry. You once told me that losing your wife taught you to live with an ache that never fully goes away. I understand that now, because even if you didn't choose me, I'll carry this ache, not as pain, but as proof that love still exists. But there's something I didn't tell you. Before the show, I was diagnosed with early-stage heart disease. The doctors told me to slow down, to avoid stress, to play it safe. But then I saw the casting call for this, a chance to love again, to laugh, to feel the world beating in my chest. So I took the risk, because if my heart was going to give out someday, I wanted it to give out knowing it had loved fully again. You gave me that gift, Mel. You reminded me that even after pain, life can still sparkle. So please, don't feel sorry for me. Just remember me when you laugh, because that's when I'll be closest to you. With all my heart, Grace." When Mel finished reading, his hands trembled. The letter slipped from his grasp and fluttered onto the table. For a long moment, he couldn't breathe. She was sick, he whispered. Mara nodded quietly. She didn't want anyone to know. She said she didn't want pity. She wanted a chance at something real. Mel closed his eyes, tears sliding silently down his cheeks. "She was real," he said softly. Every moment with her was real. The confrontation. That afternoon, Lena found Mel sitting outside near the cliffs, still holding Grace's letter. She approached slowly, her silk robe fluttering in the breeze. "Mel?" she asked gently. "What's wrong?" He handed her the letter. She read silently, her expression softening as she went. "Oh, Mel," she whispered. "I had no idea." "Neither did I," he murmured. "And now all I can think is, did I choose too soon? Did I let fear guide me instead of love?" Lena set the letter down carefully. "Don't do that to yourself. You followed your heart with what you knew. That's all anyone can do." "But what if I hurt her more than I realized?" he said. "What if she needed me, not just as love, but as hope?" Lena reached for his hand. Grace was strong. From what I saw, she didn't need saving. She needed to feel, and you gave her that. Mel looked at her, the wind ruffling his hair. She said she wanted me to remember her when I laugh. "Then you owe her that," Lena said softly. "You owe both of us that." It was the kindest thing she could have said, but behind her calm voice was something else. The quiet fear that she had just become the second choice in a story that was far from over. The reunion announcement. A few weeks later, as the world buzzed over the finale, the network announced The Golden Bachelor, After the Final Rose, live reunion special. It was meant to be a celebration, but for Mel, it felt like reopening a wound. He and Lena were flown back to Los Angeles, both smiling for the press but quiet when the cameras stopped rolling. The night before the live taping, Mel sat alone in his hotel room, scrolling through his phone, through photos of him and Grace. Her laughter, her teasing grin, her spontaneous dances. He could still hear her voice. "Love isn't supposed to be safe, Mel. It's supposed to be real." And deep down, he knew this wasn't over. Because sometimes love doesn't end when the cameras stop. Sometimes that's where it truly begins.